What is going on, everyone? Welcome to my channel, and today we're going to be looking at the history of Washington, D.C. So let's get started.
Okay.
So first of all, before there was Washington, there were many different Native American tribes that lived in the area. One of these tribes was called the Nacotchtank people. The name Washington comes from the famous General George Washington, who led the Continental Army to victory in the Revolutionary War. He also became the first president of the United States, and he played an important role in the early days of the country. In 1624, the English established the first settlement in Virginia, and it was called Jamestown. However, it would take several more decades before they would start exploring further north. In the 1630s, English explorers began traveling up the Potomac River, searching for a route to the Pacific Ocean. They encountered the Nacotchtank people along the way, and the English called this land New England. The name would eventually change to Maryland and then to Washington. In 1710, the colony of Virginia sent out an expedition to explore the area around the Potomac River. This group was led by a man named Thomas Fairfax, who was the Lord Fairfax of Virginia, and his men traveled to a place called the Great Falls of the Potomac River, and decided that this would be a good location to build a town. The Potomac River provided fresh water, the land was fertile, and there were plenty of trees for building materials. Also, it was located near the center of the colony, so it would be easy to defend. They founded the town of Alexandria in 1710, and it was named after Sir Thomas Fairfax's daughter, Lady Alexandrina Fairfax. Throughout the colonial period, Washington was a small village inhabited mostly by farmers and traders, but everything changed when the United States declared independence from Britain in 1776. During the Revolutionary War, General George Washington led the Continental Army from his headquarters at Valley Forge to victory against the British. After the war, he returned to his home in Mount Vernon, which is located just outside of Washington, where he served as the first president of the United States. When the United States was first formed, there was no official capital. Each state took turns hosting the government. That's why, if you look around the country, there are so many different capitol buildings. For example, the nation's first capital was in New York City, and then Philadelphia became the nation's capital after that. But as the country began to grow, it became clear that a permanent capital was needed. In 1789, Congress met in Philadelphia to choose a new capital city. There were many different options, but in the end, they chose Washington. The site was selected in part because it was near the center of the country and in an area that was not too developed. Also, the Potomac River provided easy transportation for trade, and the land was cheap. Plus, it was a compromise between the northern and southern states. The northern states wanted the capital to be located in the north, and the southern states wanted it to be located in the south. So they ended up choosing a spot right in the middle. The construction of Washington began in 1790, and the city was designed to be the seat of the federal government. This meant that it had to be large enough to accommodate all of the government buildings and officials, but also small enough to be easily defended. The city was laid out in a grid pattern with wide streets and large squares. This made it easy to navigate and also allowed for expansion. The Capitol building was built on the east side of the city, and the White House was built on the west side. These two buildings became the most iconic landmarks in Washington. Over time, other government buildings and monuments have been added to the city. For example, the Washington Monument was built in the 1800s, and the Lincoln Memorial was built in 1915. All of these landmarks have made Washington into one of the most famous cities in the world. In the early 1800s, Washington was still a relatively small city, but everything changed when the Erie Canal opened in 1825. This canal connected the Great Lakes to the Atlantic Ocean, and it made it possible to transport goods quickly and cheaply between Washington and other parts of the country. As a result, Washington began to grow rapidly. The population of the city went from about 10,000 people in 1800 to over 50,000 people in 1850. During this time period, Washington became known as the Federal City because it was the home of so many government buildings and officials. It was also during this time that many of the iconic landmarks of Washington were built, such as the Washington Monument and the Lincoln Memorial. During the Civil War, Washington was under threat from the Confederate Army. In 1861, President Abraham Lincoln fled to Washington when the Confederate Army captured the capital of the Confederacy, Richmond, Virginia. He stayed in the White House throughout the war, and issued the Emancipation Proclamation from there in 1863. This document freed all of the slaves in the Confederate States and is considered to be one of the most important documents in American history. After the Civil War, Washington began to grow again. The city's population doubled between 1870 and 1890, and it became one of the most diverse cities in the country. People from all over the world came to Washington to work in the government or in one of the many businesses that had sprung up around the capital. In the early 1900s, Washington became known as the City of Magnificent Distances because it was one of the first cities to have streetcars and other forms of public transportation. This made it possible for people to live far away from the city center and still be able to commute to work. During World War II, Washington was again a target of the enemy, but this time it was attacked by the Japanese. In 1941, Japan bombed Pearl Harbor and the United States entered the war. The government moved many of its operations to Washington to keep them safe from attack, and the city became known as the second capital during this time period. After the war, Washington continued to grow and change. The city's population tripled between 1950 and 2000, and it became home to many important civil rights leaders such as Martin Luther King Jr. today. Washington is one of the most popular tourist destinations in the world. Every year, millions of people visit the city to see its famous monuments and museums. The city is also home to some of the most important universities in the country, such as Georgetown University and Howard University. So yeah, that's the history of Washington. Now what about the growth of the economy? So Washington's economy has historically been driven by the federal government. The District of Columbia is home to many important government agencies and departments, such as the White House, the Capitol Building, and the Supreme Court. This means that a large portion of the city's population works in government-related jobs. In addition to government jobs, Washington is also home to many businesses and organizations that provide services to the government. This includes companies that provide security, transportation, and other services. Over the years, the city's economy has diversified to include a variety of industries. Today, Washington is home to businesses in the fields of technology, healthcare, education, and tourism. One of the most important industries in Washington's economy is tourism. Every year, millions of tourists visit the city to see its famous monuments and museums. This brings in billions of dollars to the local economy. To cater to the tourism industry, Washington is home to many hotels, restaurants, and other businesses that provide services to visitors. Another important industry in Washington's economy is education. The city is home to some of the most prestigious universities in the country, such as Georgetown University and Howard University. These universities bring in billions of dollars to the local economy each year. They also provide jobs for thousands of people who work in fields such as research and education. Alright, so that's all for the video. I hope you learned something new. If you did, please leave a like. If you're new here and you like history videos and random facts about stuff, consider subscribing. Anyways, I'll see you guys next time. Bye!